All right, everybody. Apologies in an never-ending effort.
Play
to
the song
try-
again. Play
yeah,
the song
we will.
again.
We will. I don't know why you're in here right now. You're not supposed to be here. The song's supposed to be played. In a never-ending effort to find all the technical difficulties we can, I found another one in trying to bring Ken into the show and accidentally pressed the wrong button. My apologies, everybody. Rob Mahoney with a good one says, that was scary. Thought Sean and Ken abandoned us like Pomo. Not quite like that, but what I am going to do is continue the show. So this is a continuation of the very same show. It's just like, let's think of it like an Easter egg hunt. We're trying to drop some Easter eggs into the show, and we're just a little clunky at it. But for those of you who found your way back, appreciate that. Hopefully everybody else, where there's about 250 people less watching right now than were before. My apologies. That is completely and totally on me. So let's bring in the man with the best music in the business and see if he can salvage what Renny has tried desperately to destroy. Here comes Kenny, folks. Ken, on the topic of Sean Reynolds' screw-ups on the Kenny and Renny show, we should probably add to it that I ended our last podcast, not the one that I just abbreviated after 5 minutes, but the one before that, by not announcing the lamplighter. So let's get back to doing that. And I know I threw it out there, but I need to say out loud, not the last podcast, but the podcast before. Fourth Line Maniac was the winner of the lamplighter. There's going to be a real grace period here for Fourth Line Maniac to claim that award, since I messed that up, amongst other things. Apologies, folks. Looks like, as critical as I may have been about the Winnipeg Jets and where their game is at this point going into the playoffs, they're a step above where Renny is right now as the host of this podcast you're taking part in. Ken, you look good. Good thing the show could use some looking good after what I've tried to do with it. The best thing I can say about this show so far, or what I've brought to it, is the Vittorio Rossi jacket and suit and shirt and tie and clothing here tonight. If you want to, as bad as you can screw it up, look good doing it, you can head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. They won't abbreviate your time with them at all. Ask for Frankie and the boys. They'll take all the time it needs to get you looking like $1 million. Head on down there and tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, folks. Ken, what did you see tonight?
I thought I had a good segue there, but I thought you were trying to treat me like the Jets power play treated its opportunities tonight. I guess that's what I saw. Abbreviated looks and opportunities. Sean, I mean, the Jets, again, we'll get into the debate in a minute. There were definitely some steps taken forward in the first and third periods, and even for part of overtime, but the self-inflicted wounds were too much to overcome. And special teams, it has been a story all year long, Sean. Both sides of the special teams units not at their best tonight, especially the power play. You can't have a 4-minute minor and not even generate a single shot on net.
Yeah,
that I understand it does happen, but that's a tough one for the Jets in a game where they were gifted a late power play in the third period of a tie game when their own player's stick caught Adam Lowry in the face. And again, not enough movement, not enough motion. All of the things that we saw from the Jets power play, when we saw the integration of Sean Monahan, since then, the Jets power play recently has been on the struggle bus. And that's why let's give them an early Pristine Roofing wake-up call. Jets power play absolutely abandoning them tonight. Short trip to the buffet, early call to the Pristine Roofing and
Holy
Siding wake-up call, buddy. Here we go.
I mean, I've always thought that you should be doing the wake up calls. I mean, the wake up call was your thing, and it sounds like coming out of your mouth, it's like put some stank on it. No one knows how to tell someone to wake up like Ken. So hey, you know what that means, especially when Ken says it. It's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake up call at 1-204-981-6289. He's the guy that you want to call for all your roofing, siding, exterior needs. He can tell you exactly what you need as roofing season. I know it got cold. What is the 7th winter we're in right now? But roofing season is underway, so you can also call Pristine Roofing at 1-204-237-7663. And don't forget, if there's someone in your life that could use a new roof and may not have the means to pull it off, Pristine Roofing is giving away a free roof in their Pay It Forward program. Get a hold of them, North End Rick or Pristine Roofing. Let them know about that person in your life that could use that help, because they are generously donating that into the community, and it could be you or someone that you know who benefits from it. Great job by Pristine Roofing. Okay, Ken, moving on.
Sure. And again, the penalty kill, not bad. 1 for 4 against the Oilers. That's not a bad night against a prolific power play. But in a game where the Jets are 0 for 5 with the power play, they can't really afford to give any up on special teams, and they did. Otherwise, I mean, Sean Monahan, I liked his game a lot, Sean. We talked the other day about Toffoli and had quieted down a bit. And, I don't think he was completely on his game again tonight either.
Yeah. Wow.
No shots on net for Toffoli, 2 attempts in the game in 15-50. But I absolutely love the way that Sean Monahan played. Kind of got back to going on the face-off circle, back to 15%, 3 shots on net, 2 shot attempts missed, so 5 shot attempts in the game. Got himself a beautiful redirection goal. I thought he was moving really well. He was kind of moving back to the way he had been moving at the beginning, Sean. So big step forward there for Monahan. Nikolai Ehlers, sort of a absolutely strange game, peaks and valleys. Like this was a peaks and valleys type of game for Ehlers. A penalty that he absolutely cannot take. I understand it was accidental, but you can't swing your stick one-handed. I know the stick rode up and caught Darnell Nurse, but you absolutely cannot take that penalty. Sean, we talked about it with Mark Scheifele in the last game. That play is a nothing burger, and it cost them. This time, he was lucky that the 4-minute double minor did not lead directly to a goal against. I love the fire he came back with on the next shift, even though he was probably lucky he wasn't given another penalty. Could have been boarding on the hit down low, but he generated some things after that and was skating. But that penalty, you can't take it at that situation. The Scheifele line, there were some signs there in the game, Sean, but Kyle Connor turns it over on the overtime winner against. Again, this is a play where you're trying, a smart, skilled player trying to do too much and turning it over in a position where you absolutely can't turn the puck over in the offensive zone. I mean, Mark Scheifele gets walked on the winning goal also. I mean, by Zach Hyman. There's no doubt about it. He kind of waved at him, and if he pokes that puck away and goes the other way, they get the 2-on-1. But as it turns out, Mark Scheifele got beat on the game-winning goal. There's no way around that. I don't think it was a lack of effort, but Zach walked around him and buries his own rebound.
Okay, what's the greater sin? What's the greater sin? Mark Scheifele in that situation, or Kyle Connor having possession of the puck in the opposition zone and just turning it right over to nobody?
I think both of them make a critical error, but Kyle had position and he had control of the puck. So in this case, I would say that the turnover is part of the greater sin, but there's almost 200 feet of ice between the time where the turnover happens and where the goal happens. So I think that there's shared responsibility. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're not here to point the finger and assess blame, but we are here to try to explain what happened. And that was an example of Kyle trying to do too much. And again, this isn't a lack of effort from Scheifele. He was trying to make a poke check and he missed on the poke check, and Hyman got by him and found his own rebound. I mean, that's something where, those plays happen. Zach Hyman's got 51 goals and it gets to the net. I mean, Nate Schmidt, I talked about this with him in the morning. Of Zach Hyman's 50 goals going into the game, I think he said 34 or 36 were scored in the blue paint. He has been a Nino Niederreiter type of goal scorer, but he gets there and goes to the right spots with great tenacity. So that's another great example in that game as well. So again, that's a great example of the self-inflicted wounds that we are going to dive into with great, a microscope. We're going to dive into that a little further as we move along here. Neil Pionk had a couple helpers in the game. I mean, he needed to kind of have a bounce back game, and I thought that there were certainly moments that he played a lot better in the game. Were they all perfect? No. But I thought the effort level was high. And again, I'm not just saying this because he got a couple of helpers. Yes, I mean, was he on? Let's see here. He was on the ice for the Draisaitl goal. But to me, Sean, I mean, again, we're not going to be fawning over the the Oilers in this game. But I am going to say that an incredible, we talk about the defensive struggles of some of the offensive players around the league. Connor McDavid, Sean, lifts the stick of Nino Niederreiter on what looked like a wide open net that was going to extend the lead to 2-0. And the stick lift by McDavid happens earlier in the shift, and the Oilers get going the other direction, and Leon Draisaitl takes a pass from Warren Foegele and ties the game. And so that was a massive play where it was all effort from McDavid. That's the type of play that right now is a separator between the Jets and their opponent. They played better against the Capitals, and they played better against the Oilers than they did against the Devils and the Islanders. There's no question about that. But that effort by the best player of his generation, that is right now, that's the extra mile, going the extra mile. The other day it was Ovechkin scoring twice, right? So the Jet Stars, Connor Hellebuyck, I agree, had a very solid effort in between the pipes. No softies whatsoever in the game. But right now, the Jets, the best Jet star players have to elevate. And again, Kyle Connor, Sean, he makes such a subtle play in order to get his shot off. Vincent Desharnais is a shot blocking machine. He thought he was in the lane, and that Kyle Connor, at the end of a long shift, had nothing on the play. He makes a little slight hesitation, finds himself a lane, really quick low shot. Skinner kicks it out. There's Mason Appleton. Bam, 1-0. That's an elite hockey play by Kyle Connor. The turnover in overtime, that's a player trying to make something out of nothing, and it bounces back, it goes the other way, and is in the back of the net. And that's something that is going to show up on the video, and that's something that Kyle Connor, he knows he has to clean that up. But anyways, there's lots to dive into, and we'll keep diving, but that's probably enough of time at the buffet. Russell James Peters, the update on Gabriel Vilardi. He was on the ice this morning, and some folks, I would say, are, because they saw him in a regular jersey, we're like, whoa, why isn't he in the lineup? Well, Gabriel Vilardi hadn't skated with his teammates since February 29th. So I don't know how long he's been on the ice before this. Rick Bowness didn't say. I assume he's been on the ice a little bit, but he is not ready to jump in the lineup tomorrow. And I think the only reason he was wearing a regular jersey and not non-contact was because there wouldn't be any contact in the morning skate today. So what Rick Bowness told us this morning is that he's feeling better and starting to look better. Sean, I know you were watching. I thought he was moving around pretty well, but I think it's going to take some time before Gabriel Vilardi is back. I don't expect him back before, let's say, maybe a week from now, maybe 2 weeks from now. I'm just not expecting him back imminently, but I do think he's making progress, and there is no doubt that the Jets miss Gabriel Vilardi. But I would say that having him around the team is going to be a step forward, and he's the kind of guy that can really help the power play, I believe. But again, we don't have concrete timeline for Gabriel Vilardi. When you're dealing with an enlarged spleen, I guess I would say that that's probably under control, but we never found out what the other injury is. So I would say it's still, unless you don't agree, but I don't expect him back either Thursday against Vegas, or I would say it's unlikely he plays against Ottawa. I would say the earliest we see him is next Monday against the Kings, or maybe even Thursday in the finale of the homestand. It's possible he doesn't even play until the next road trip.
A bunch of different places to go with that, Ken. Before I do that, I was going to bring this up. And who says this? LP says, I thought Hyman only scored 50 because of his privilege. I've never met Andrew Berkshire before. What an all-time terrible take from him.
Brutal.
Like, all time, and the doubling down on it. And the part about calling out the media for not refusing to tell stories, like those who have missed it, he basically builds a case that because Zach Hyman comes from a wealthy family, I honestly, I don't understand the argument. And every time people pushed back on it, he tried to say that he was saying something different. But the way I read what he had to say is he essentially said that the media refuses to tell this story, but Zach Hyman is successful because his parents are wealthy. There's a lot of kids of wealth in the NHL. Like, let's get that clear. It's an elitist sport now. The fact that he thinks that he's calling out other journalists who aren't saying this, like, this is a well-known fact, I've thought, for a long time. Like, hey, if you want to know what it takes, go out and try and buy a pair of skates for your kids nowadays. It takes money to be able to get people there. I've got a buddy right now who's got a kid who's going to into the WHL and has gone to a couple of these hockey academies, and he and his wife sold their house and moved into a condo in order to be able to fund what they're doing right now. Like, people go crazy trying to do this, and Andrew Berkshire somehow thinks that he's the only guy in the world who knows this. Like, you're the guy who missed the bell on this. But the attack on Zach Hyman in this situation is just ridiculous, pathetic, to be quite honest. The doubling down that he's done back on this. So anyways, good on LP for calling this out, and everybody else who is calling this out. This was just an all-time, like, we're talking about ice cold takes. There was the Titanic was hit by an iceberg on this one tonight. That was iceberg level, continental iceberg shelf level cold take on this one. Zach Hyman showed you tonight why he's good. And does he come from a family of wealth? Yes, he does, as do a lot of players in the NHL. And I've yet to see the guy who bought his way into the NHL without having skill or a push or drive or any of those things. Zach Hyman showed why he was good tonight. And how fitting for him to score a game winner in an important game to help his team turn around on the day that drivel came out. Just ridiculous.
This guy's a 5th round draft pick, and his previous high is 36. So he's a self-made player. Has he played?
Well, the other part I don't get about it is his argument is essentially like, oh, you wonder how a guy does this at 31. What does he think has happened? Like, 31 shows that he's continued to get better and better and better. And the further away he's got from his parents giving him his advantages as a younger child, he's got better and better and better. And this is somehow his argument is that it's now you wonder how a guy at 31 hits 50. How's that happen? Rich parents, everybody. Just like an all-time, hit yourself in the face with a sledgehammer take on this one. We need to move on because I feel dumber just talking about it at this stage. And listen, I don't have a lot of IQ points to give away here, people. I did want to talk about this quickly. Bob's video says, funny, people knocking Bones for putting Lowry line out in OT, but they were the better line. Christian O'Mell and I had a big conversation about this as it was happening. He didn't like it. I liked it because I thought, now it's a risk, because as defensive as those guys are, there's a lot of open ice, right? And those guys are fast players that can change everything. But the risk, to me, pays off. The Winnipeg Jets get their top line out against, the second overtime line, and definitely two of the best players in the world off the ice. It worked out exactly how Rick Bowness had wanted, except for the part where the effort just wasn't there from those guys on this night. What did you think about the move?
I've got no problem with Adam Lowry being on the ice to start. The Jets did it once earlier this year, and they won the game with the goal, right? I mean, they had an OT winner with Lowry on the ice. I think Lowry scored the overtime winner. So I've got no problem with the strategy. I mean, and as Rick Bowness pointed out afterward, when he was asked about it, Adam Lowry played against Connor McDavid all game long. And Connor McDavid wasn't racking up his points against Adam Lowry. Uh, Connor McDavid's assist came with the Scheifele line on the ice, and his power play assist came with, Lowry was on the ice, but it had nothing to do with him. That's a missed coverage type of play, and McDavid makes a perfect pass to the back door to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins off the rush. So, I mean, who would you rather have out against Connor McDavid than Adam Lowry? That's his job, is to go out against him and do the job. So,
well, and maybe based on how they were playing tonight, he thought it's better off not to, with that open ice, put Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor up against them if they didn't have those legs. The other on the Draisaitl goal, Ken, if you noticed, both Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor chase the same man, which is what opens up the essential odd man rush in that situation there. And it was one of those strange situations where it looked like Mark Scheifele had the guy, and then Kyle Connor skates in to also have the guy. The thing, I mean, it's a confusion on both sides here. Probably Kyle Connor shouldn't have gone there, but once he went there, Mark Scheifele should have busted off and gone in a different direction. And instead, in the moment where he can make the change, he doesn't make the change, and they both get caught in no man's land. So not a great night for them. I had this thought, and I want to get this out before we go too far, because I know for a long time the conversation in Winnipeg has been, Kyle Connor doesn't get his due, underrated player, all that, and this is one of those takes, like, as a guy from not just Winnipeg, smaller than Winnipeg, small town Manitoba. I really, like, unless it is an obvious situation, I really cringe when I hear people leaning into the no one gives us the attention we deserve and stuff like that. Like, it's to me, it's just use it in the right circumstances. I'm not sure that this is that one. And the thing I always make the point of in this is, like, how do we talk about Jake Gensel? I know he was the biggest pickup of the trade deadline, but before this, no one talks, like, because I've heard this conversation about people saying Kyle Connor should be considered a top 10 player in the NHL and all this kind of stuff, top 20 or whatever. I've said this before. He's Jake Gensel. You take a look at their career numbers. Jake Gensel actually has more points than Kyle Connor in less career games. They're the same player. Kyle Connor has slightly more goals, but not a ton more. 19 more goals based on the two of them. I guess that's not an insignificant number, but with, giving up 9 games in hand, you think maybe 3 or 4 comes from. So regardless, one gets a little bit more assists, but this is the same player. And I don't know how many people in Winnipeg are screaming that Jake Gensel deserves more credit than what he gets or should be considered this high of a player. But what it got me thinking about on a night like tonight, where we take a look at this game and you see all these star players, and you take a look on the ice, and I think that Connor Hellebuyck is the best player on the ice in this game. T. Will, I know, is really interested in the Renny stat. And yes, in the Renny stat tonight, no doubt about it, Connor Hellebuyck was the better goalie in this game. We saw Hyman do what he does really well. We saw Connor McDavid, with that jaw-dropping speed doing his thing. We see Leon Draisaitl with just those smarts and that big body and the way that he slows down the game and seems to back off players without moving at all. You saw all those kind of things, and it got me thinking, if you are going to be considered a top 10 player in the league, like I've heard Jets fans suggest about Kyle Connor in the past, I like, how many nights in a year is Connor McDavid the best player on the ice when he plays? How many games do you walk away from and he's the best player on the ice? And I started thinking about this game and then working my way backwards and thinking, was Kyle Connor the best player on the ice in this game? The answer is no. If you go back to the last game against the Washington Capitals, it's probably Alexander Ovechkin or their goaltender in that situation, Charlie Lindgren. The game before that, we're probably talking Matthew Barzal. The game before that, it's Jack Hughes. The game before that, it's Mark Scheifele. The 2 games before that, maybe it's Tyler Toffoli. The game before that, it's the Predators and their entire team. Maybe the game before that, would you give him consideration in the 3-0 victory over Washington? The game before that, it's Vancouver and it's Jack Hughes. The game before that, it's the Jets and it's Adam Lowry and Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele. I don't think you can be the guy who puts up good numbers but rarely do you walk away from watching a game and being like, that guy was the best player on the ice. Don't be telling me someone like that is top 10 in the NHL or top 20 even in the NHL if you do not walk away from games and say, wow, that is one of the best players in the NHL. I think that is where it gets lost in translation here, because you have to think, if you want to earn a reputation around the league and you think your players are being undervalued around the rest of the league, all those players go and play in every other building in the NHL. And if they're not going into Dallas and leaving that crowd wowed, or San Jose or Florida or New Jersey, then you're not getting the buzz out there. Like it's up to a player to get the buzz out there. So to me, I started thinking about that, and I wondered how much of a role that played in Kyle Connor not getting the respect that Jets fans feel that he deserves around the league.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to some coaches. There's a lot of coaches in the NHL that love Kyle Connor's game-breaking ability, his skating, his speed, and his release. And that, I mean, he was on pace to be a 50-goal guy this year. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of nights when, yeah, I mean, I think he's still, again, I'm not making excuses for him, but there's no doubt in my mind, Sean, that Kyle Connor's knee is not back up to the level it was. Like, he's not as explosive as he was prior to the knee-on-knee collision with Ryan Strome, and part of that is probably the brace that he is wearing. So he had such a great start to the year, and since he's been back, he's still working to find his way. And right now the Jets need more from him. Yes, he had an important assist in the game today, but in a game where the game breakers on the other team, like you said, were the best players, Kyle was a player who had an assist in the game, but he wasn't a game breaker. Like but I would say
I just
against
think
Washington,
if you're looking on the ice, people are eye popping, right? He pops up on the score sheet. I don't think he pops up the way that Connor McDavid pops up in a game here tonight. And I don't need to go back over all those games. I think I overdid it, but I think I made my point. I think that point is valid. I don't think you look at any of the last 10, 15 games and say Kyle Connor is the best player on the ice. And to be honest, before the knee injury, I don't know how many nights that you're saying that either.
Well, he had 8 shots and 9 attempts against Washington. I think he was one of the Jets' best players on the ice, if not the best player on the ice on Sunday.
You think Kyle Connor was the best player in the ice in
the most dangerous player for the Jets? Who's more dangerous?
For the Jets. I'm talking about, like, you want to go. Hey, like.
Well, they got shut out, so yeah, I don't think
right. But if you go into Washington and you want the people in Washington to be like, wow, that guy's a player. How often has Connor McDavid gone in there, or Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews? The list goes on, gone in there, and the people in Washington walked away and been like, that's a guy. That's a guy. How many times has Jack Hughes started doing it already in his career? And so I still think my point stands, is I don't think Kyle Connor left that day and the Washington crowd was like, boy, oh boy, did we get lucky and get away from that guy. I'm not saying he's not a good player. Haven't said that at all. He shows up on the score sheet too often to do it. But if you are going to talk about the kind of players and try and put him in the top 10, top 20, top 30 players in the NHL, is an exceptional list of players. I think you got to be the kind of player that goes in and leaves your mark on a game.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to retort that here. I think that, yeah. Let's go on to the next.
Right. The Renny stat, the most overrated stat that no one has ever heard of. I mean, he's right. He's right. I'm not going to argue.
Sorry, and just on the goaltending point,
he's not going to stop me from continuing with the Renny stat.
Connor Hellebuyck was definitely the best goalie on the ice, Sean, but Stuart Skinner was the reason the Jets weren't up 1 or 2-0. The shots were 7 or 8-1 out of the gate. The Jets had a couple of great chances, redirection, a couple of really excellent shots in tight. In a game where the Jets were looking to respond, they came out of the gate flying, but they didn't really have anything to show for it until early in the second period. So I would say Skinner did his job in coming back, from a tough goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I love the fact that Stuart Skinner was out talking to the media on a game that he started. I think it's a myth that goalies need to be protected and,
agreed,
not talk on game day. I mean, Stuart Skinner gave me an exceptional answer about Winnipegger Calvin Pickard when I asked him about it. And then I went over to his stall after just to thank him. And this is a guy who, has endured a lot in a young career, Sean. And he comes to the game with a great, exceptional attitude. And I mean, a guy who's appreciative of a guy like Calvin Pickard, who looked like he was going to be, in the minors as a number 3 guy, and now has stolen the backup job. And anyways, just wanted to share that quickly. And good on Pickard for having such a great year. He's a good Winnipegger who he hasn't been a full-time NHLer for a long time. Anyways, let's get back to the Jetsons here.
Yeah. Before we do that, I want you to give Sweet Lou a shout out.
Right on. For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, whether you're buying, selling, or curious what that house on the corner is going for, you can contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast. Tell him Kenny and Renny sent you.
Before we move on, I'm going to throw a bone to Ken here because he needs this one. And he was, what really paid off?
Just begging for it today.
Jets?
Just begging.
You know what the Winnipeg Jets really paid off for the Winnipeg Jets today was breaking up the third line as soon as that goal was scored. They broke it up accidentally, and Ken was waiting for his moment. Wrong for what is it, like 52-7? Is it? I guess probably like 63 straight games. Ken's been wrong on his take about breaking up the third line, and he waits for that one moment where there's a shoulder shift and Kyle Connor gets out and he says, "There it is."
Check the receipts. Check the receipts.
So there you go. The receipts tell us that it really paid off tonight for the Winnipeg Jets to break up the third line. And if you are looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt-free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Ken, Logan Stanley, did you write about him? The way you're
Mike was right in the game. Or sorry,
there you go.
It's a day off tomorrow, so might need a quick sidebar on him, Sean.
There you go. So
anyways, we've been talking about this quite a lot, and I always point to we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, and I'm not advocating for Logan Stanley to fight every single time he gets into the lineup, but when he is pulled out of the bullpen for a game like this that has all kinds of hostility and intensity, he took the first step in what he needs to do in those situations. This was the complete opposite of last year. Maybe it was the year, actually it might have been the year before. I've often referenced this. In a game against the Nashville Predators, Logan Stanley did the right thing. Tanner Jeannot wallpapered his defense partner, Nate Schmidt, into the boards from behind. He immediately went over to him, casually kind of tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Do you want to go?" And Tanner Jeannot said yes. And they had a decent fight, but I don't think that Logan won the fight. Today, he hammers Perry into the end boards. And before Perry has a chance to do anything about it, Logan Stanley initiated the contact. Then he dropped the gloves. He didn't ask Corey Perry if he wanted to go. He told them they were going and then went out and won the fight. So again, good on Corey Perry to take the fight. Corey Perry didn't expose his head to be, taking a lot of shots for someone who obviously had a much longer reach in the fight, but he got involved in a game early. He tried to get his teammates into it, to get the fans into it. And I thought that was, again, I don't need Logan Stanley to fight every single game, but that has to be part of his repertoire. Initiating the contact was important in the game. I thought that Logan Stanley was steady. He finished with 15 shifts for 13.42 in the game. He had 3 hits, 2 blocked shots. That's a nice, quiet game on the third pairing, but it wasn't quiet because of the physical nature he brought to the game. And I know there are a lot of people out there that said, "Oh, why put Logan Stanley in a high-paced game and risk having him out there on the end of the highlight reel for Connor McDavid?" Logan Stanley handled himself very well in the game. Does that mean I think that he should be playing ahead of Dylan Samberg? No, it is not. I don't think that Dylan Samberg shouldn't have been in this game, but I'm not coaching the team. So I've got no problem Logan Stanley jumping in and out of the lineup here in a stretch where the Jets are playing 17 times in 31 days. No problem whatsoever. I, I just thought that the timing was a touch curious, but Logan Stanley went in and did his job effectively on that third pairing, Sean. I liked his game. What about you?
I mean, him going right at the guy on the other team who's the guy to get things going. That to me is that's what he needs to do, right? So I've said this time and time again. And Logan Stanley needs to go in and he needs to provide a reason for them to keep him in the lineup, right? So him going out and doing what he did there and then trying to get the crowd into it afterwards is exactly what you need to do. Now, for a guy like myself who is okay with fighting in the game of hockey and thinks that it can, do things to gel teams together and to create momentum. It sure didn't in this situation. It almost seemed to kill the early kind of momentum that you were talking about the Jets having, which they did have at the start of this game. I thought that was a little odd in that situation, but I mean, I took a look at him. He didn't stand out in too many places other than that for me. And I think that's what you're looking for from him in that player to show up, try and give that opportunity to the team to get a boost from what happens there. Show Corey. Like I also thought Corey Perry, who's the kind of guy who can really be a difference maker in games like that, wasn't much of a difference
Nowhere to be
maker after
found.
that. He got pretty quiet after that. So, if you're Stan and you go out and at the beginning, you give an opportunity to create a spark, you give your fans a little bit something, that opportunity, and then you take one of the guys, you erase a player from the other line for the rest of that game, from the other team for the rest of that game, you're doing your job, right? So to me, I take a look at this and it's always for me about that. Did you earn yourself another game? I mean, I think Logan Stanley earns another look for himself, or at least puts himself in a situation where the coaches aren't afraid to go there again. Just to me, this whole, kind of seventh and maybe Ken, based on what we always talk about in that series you and I saw back in 2019 between the Stars and the Blues, and the way that the coaches use their black aces and their seventh defenseman and their 13th forward so effectively in that series. Maybe I'm diminishing it. I just don't look at the Jets situation that they have with Colin Miller and Nate Schmidt and Logan Stanley and think like they've got the kind of players that when they cycle them in and out of the lineup, it's going to make a really big impact on the series. I don't see that. I think you're just trying to hold serve when you put those players in for the most part. I think that Nate Schmidt is clearly your best option. So everything that they've done to kind of buffer themselves against something that happens with Nate Schmidt, I still think that Nate Schmidt is clearly the best option that they have. But I don't know. Logan Stanley did what Logan Stanley needed to do in this situation. I just don't know that it's as big an issue or as pressing an issue as most people like to make it. It's fun to debate. It's fun to talk about guys going in and out of the lineup. I just don't think there's enough going on with those players to create the kind of change that is worth spilling so much ink for the debate.
No, I think that the only thing that I'm trying to say here is that the
And I'm
Jets
not
had
saying
to
you're
keep their players fresh during this span of time. So, but now that they're down to 10 games, Sean, I don't think there should be a revolving door here for a team that's trying to find its identity
and find consistency.
Yes, I think they got to start dressing a consistent lineup. They're home now for a 5-game stretch. There's a block of time where they have two days between games, that Monday and Thursday. It doesn't have to be Thursday, but I think this is the time now to be, outside of the odd game. I think they should be like what they did against the Rangers, Sean. They basically dressed their game one lineup, right, against the Rangers, and they played one of their best games. So since that time, they've done a lot of they've done in and outs, tweaking the fourth line and tweaking the third pairing. But I think now, as the Jets are trying to find this consistency here, where they took steps in the first and the third and had a terrible second, according to their head coach and Brendan Dillon and Niederreiter, I think they need to start running their game one lineup out with regularity here. I think that they've had plenty of time to assert themselves in this competition. The one thing I would say, I think that actually Cole Perfetti, I thought was very noticeable in his limited minutes today. I thought he was making confident plays with the puck, and that's what he needs to do to be under consideration to be in the game one lineup, instead of potentially David Gustafsson. But right now, I think that I would be advocating strongly for the Jets to start dressing their top six. And I think I'm with you. I mean, Nate Schmidt is in that top six, and so is Dylan Sandberg. So, like 3 healthy scratches, as far as we know, that's enough now. Dylan Sandberg is ready to play the last 10 games unless he has some kind of nagging injury we're unaware of.
Yeah. I want to go to what I think is the most interesting
Oh, yeah.
conversation to have, based on what we've been seeing as of late. Sorry. Well, first, I just want to go here in this, and I know that sometimes we take a lot of heat. I think I take a little more heat than you do here, Ken.
Deservedly so.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're a trailblazer, people are always, when you go places that other people are afraid to go, that can be a problem. One of the things that I want to really talk about that I thought that we were really justified in a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in this podcast today when we talked with the players and we talked with Rick Bowness, and they basically talked about like that 30 game stretch before Christmas. How much time have we talked on this podcast about post Christmas and the struggles they've had? And we started talking about them not doing very well against good teams. And then shortly afterwards, Rick Bowness started talking out loud about them not doing good against teams. I've been talking for a long time and broke down how this team has played since Christmas time and why. Because of that, I would expect, and I'm keeping count right now from the last 12 games of the season, I said the numbers should suggest to us that in the last 12 games of the season, based on their schedule, we should expect the Jets to get in the neighborhood of 13 points. 2 games gone, they've earned 1 point, right? So now you've got 10 games. They need to get 12 points out of those 10 games. They basically need to go 6-4, which would be a decent record, and that would get them those 13 points, right? But Rick Bowness essentially blew up the conversation by bringing it up with his players. You can tell when the coach puts out a message because the players just basically spit it out, and they're talking about those 30 games, which means they're basically saying they've slipped since Christmas time. The conversation we've been having for a long time. And I know you get so much hate when you say they aren't playing that well, and people scoff and say they're in first place or second place and all this kind of stuff. I always love, and I do think we're here to make sure we give quality analysis and a good reason for people to be here. And I think if you go back and you listen to our analysis since Christmas time, if you went back and looked at shows, we're saying things that entire time that they're saying out loud now, or we're saying things. I still remember this before that 5-game losing streak. I took a lot of heat from people who saying I didn't like the way the Jets were playing. They start playing better teams, it's not going to go well. And then they follow that up with a 5-game losing streak. I'm really proud of the analysis that we do, Ken. I don't know how this turned into a commercial for Kenny and Renny, but I'm not going to stop it now that I've got it started. We've nailed a lot of this since Christmas time, and now it's all out there. It's admitted by the team where they feel they are in this situation. But part of that has to do with Rick Bowness and the kind of cute, cuddly, throw his arm around your shoulder, everything it's okay persona that he had a little bit more this year than that last year is gone. And I don't know if he had it removed surgically and that's what he was missing time for. But Rick Bowness is back and he is spitting blunt truths about his team. And then tonight was another example. I came on at the beginning of this podcast, which you can find on a different podcast because I messed up the show. But I came in and I'd said that I see progress. I see steps forward. I see the Jets taking steps up the stairway to try to get where they were going. When I gave that to Rick Bowness and asked him if he sees that progress, I mean, he said, yeah, but then basically turned around and hammered his team over and over and over again. I've had the truth teller moniker stolen from me by Rick Bowness. What do you take away from Rick Bowness, who is just basically bluntly saying, listen, if we don't start doing things better, we're not going anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the honesty was there. And Sean, I said this the other day, like we're hearing plenty of accountability in the answers from players. We heard it on the weekend and we heard it again today from both Brendan Dillon and Nino Niederreiter, but Rick was the bluntest of the bunch. And again, the self-inflicted wounds, like it's accurate, but at some point, Sean, and those self-inflicted wounds, when you can't clean them up and they become more than just a bad habit, then to me, it's more than just a self-inflicted wound, right? when it happens once or twice, yes. But when it starts to become a theme, that's when it becomes concerning. Now, and again, when I know that we were, arguing the same thing, but I was kind of debating with you a little bit. That's what you were talking about the other day, right? When some people thought I was trying to paint this rosy picture and saying that nothing is wrong, everything's fine. Well, no, the Jets have problems with their game, and those problems are should be easy to correct. That's why they're self-inflicted wounds, but they aren't correcting them.
1 second, Ken. I'm going to let you keep going. Just for those of you out there who don't recognize this is Ken saying, Sean, you were right. Anyways, go on, Ken.
You were right to a degree. Yeah, let's go with that. But this is really good from Rick. When you're making a bad decision with the puck at the blue line and you're making bad changes, that's self-inflicted. It's nothing they're doing. Like, I would also argue that part of the play of the opponent is causing some of those self-inflicted wounds. It's often coming from the Jets trying to do too much or being frustrated by not scoring. So, yeah, they've just created their own problems. Do we take the next step when we clean that up? Yeah. Were there enough good things there? Yeah. We had a lot of chances to score. We hit the crossbar. We had breakaways, but so did they. And then Rick coming with the crescendo here, Sean, and basically coming off the top rope. It's disappointing when I see us giving up that many shots and that many chances against. I hate to see that. You're not going anywhere playing like that. We've got to continue to tighten it up. That's not our game. So, yeah, I mean, Rick wasn't sugarcoating it, right? He wasn't sugarcoating it because
not one bit.
He said, yeah, they took some strides, but he also has the realization. Rick's been to the Stanley Cup final, Sean, on multiple occasions. Once as with Dallas as the head man, and also with the Vancouver Canucks 2011 Game 7 loss to Boston. He knows how close that he's been to getting his name engraved on that cup. And quite frankly, the Jets, Sean, right now are not playing to that standard enough in a 60-minute game. And that's why Rick Bowness is concerned. And is he waving the white flag and thinking the Jets can't change that in 10 games? Absolutely not. But right now, they're not playing well enough to win 4 rounds. So there you go. That's the challenge for the players and the coaching staff. The coaching staff will set out the plan, and the players need to execute the plan. Because if the Jets can steadily walk up the ladder, as you mentioned, they are a legitimate contender. But Brendan Dillon pointed it out flat out. When they play that way, yes, they can beat anybody. They're an elite team. But when they don't, they're not an elite team. And that, to me, that's recognition by the player. It's also a reminder of the work that needs to be done. And when we're not doing that, when we're trying to be fancy or letting our foot off the gas, and that's a problem. A team is trying to ramp up, and we understand that. The Jets have 10 games to ramp their game up, and then they're going to either, be playing one of Dallas or Colorado or, who knows. And we should say, for folks who didn't see tonight, Nashville Predators were down 3-0 and 4-1 to the Vegas Golden Knights, who were playing on a back-to-back, yes. But the Nashville Predators came back and overcame 2 separate 3-goal deficits and won the game in overtime and are now 4 points behind the Winnipeg Jets. So to your point, Sean, I mean, the Jets need to be just slightly over a 500 team. That will make them a 50-win team. But if they can't be a 500 team in these last 5 games or slightly over, there's a realistic chance they could be a wild card team.
You know what? It's a lot of people are bringing it up. That's a lot to happen, right? Just that point that they got.
I didn't say it's going to happen.
No. I know. I'm addressing the people who are saying this, because I know a lot of people texted me tonight or messaged me and talked about the idea of the Jets falling behind. The numbers tell us that's not going to happen, right? Even though they're 4 back, but one powerful tool that the Winnipeg Jets have is they have the tiebreaker on almost everybody else. They've got it on the Dallas Stars. They've got it on the Colorado Avalanche. They've got it on the Nashville Predators. So the importance of that tonight, especially with the Nashville Predators facing the Winnipeg Jets down the stretch here, is if you shrink that lead, if you don't make that comeback in this game and send it to overtime and get that single point, and now the Nashville Predators are just 3 points behind you. Well, if the Predators win that game head to head, now all they need to do is win one more game than you down the stretch after that. So if you finish 5-4 and they finish 6-3, there you go. They're past you, right? So it's still, I know 4 points doesn't seem like a lot, and I'm not saying it can't be done. By no means am I saying it can't be done. The Jets could lose their next game against the Golden Knights and they could win their next one. Suddenly it's down to 2 points, and then now you're within the margin of error of that game, other than the fact that the Jets have the tiebreaker in that situation. But
there's one more head-to-head game too, though.
That's what I've mentioned that 2 times.
Sorry, but they have the tiebreaker now, but there's still one game. If they win the game, they're even in the series. They're the series, right? Oh no, it's 3-game series. Sorry.
No, but regulation overtime.
Oh, regulation overtime. Regulation wins. Sorry.
Is the tie. So the Jets have more wins than everybody else. They've done a good job of locking
tied
down
for the NHL lead.
Exactly, which is why they're in a good position so it is still more statistically likely that the Winnipeg Jets catch first in the league than it is that they get caught and fall into the wild card spot. All that said, I don't think it's likely that they do that they catch first place. That statistically is now really hard to do, especially, never mind the idea that I've said this before, and I still believe that the schedule that they have right now is not conducive to them ending up in a very good spot. I just think that it's hard to make up 4 points in 10 games. It's hard.
3 points now. Colorado lost tonight.
No, I'm talking about the.
Sorry,
you're
Nashville.
Just missing everything I'm saying right now. This is
no, you were just talking about
swings and misses. Nashville, I know. I'm saying that for those people who are worried about them dropping down into the wild card, 4 points and the tiebreaker, essentially 5 points, is a lot to make up in 10 games. Is what I'm saying. Not saying it's not. There's not a potential for it to happen. I can't believe Nashville keeps doing what they're doing. It's still statistically very unlikely that happens. But I guess my point is, even if it does, someone brought it up here earlier, and I want to bring it up. Oh boy, give me 1 second here. Someone had said here it is. Tyler Sattler says, this may sound crazy, but at this point between finishing third and playing Dallas with the home ice advantage, or finishing in the wild card spot and potentially facing Vancouver without pressure, Ken, I know you like this idea. I know you think that there's potential that the Vancouver Canucks would be the best matchup for the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs out of the other 7 teams in the West, and I'm not sure I disagree with that.
I do think it's their best matchup, but not because of the lack of pressure that Tyler mentioned. Though, yes, of course, when you fall from first in the division into a wild card spot, yes, that will alleviate some of the pressure in terms of outside expectation. But I do think that the best matchup is against Vancouver, because of the construction of I love the way that the Canucks played against the Jets in terms of their structure in the second meeting. I didn't love the way that they played in the first meeting. And Sean, you saw them 2 extra times than I did in person. They're a team that's not overly physical. They're not overly big. Their star players outside of JT Miller, who I love his compete level, they're not overly, like blue ice type players among their top 6, but there's no optimal matchup for any team in the West. I said this earlier with Jason Gregor today in Edmonton. But right now it's looking more like the Jets will play Dallas or Colorado. And the beauty is that those teams are all playing one another down the stretch, Sean. Jets have matchups with all of them. Nashville on that road trip, they've got to play Nashville, Dallas, and Colorado. And those teams are playing each other as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Canucks have a great team. They've taken great strides this year. If Bubble Demko is there, the Canucks can be a problem. There's no doubt. But the Canucks also, they haven't had a lot of that. They haven't had a lot of that playoff success, and they haven't had their real heartbreak yet. So could they be a team that goes and gets bounced as a high seed? Yes, I do think that that's possible. I also think that Quinn Hughes' game is elevated, substantially this year also. And he's the kind of impact player that can win a series. So again, they'd have their own issues in terms of the matchup game there, but compared to how they've played against Dallas, which is not well, Yes, they've played well against Colorado, but we'll see how they do in the head-to-head coming up. But anyways, no matter who's playing whom in the Western Conference, to get out of the West, you're going to have to play incredible hockey. You're going to have to stay healthy, and you're going to have to get exceptional goaltending for 2 rounds to make the conference final. No matter who's playing whom, and the LA Kings are proof of that. They're breathing down the necks of the Oilers right now too, in the Pacific Division. So, anyways, matchups are going to be fun.
Let me just say this: the Vancouver Canucks are a team that took a long time to finally get to where they are below the playoff line. I think what happens a lot of those times is, okay, now it's a different season. They haven't been to the playoffs for a while. So sometimes there's lessons to be learned there. Whereas the rest of the league that you're looking at, the Dallas Stars, extremely playoff hardened, know what to expect. Colorado Avalanche coming off of a cup. The Nashville Predators could fall into that category of a team that when it gets to the playoffs haven't been there for a while, so it's maybe a bit trickier, except for the fact that you've got a guy like Ryan O'Reilly leading the way, who is, a Conn Smythe Trophy winner and really, a guy who can take you there. And never mind, this is the most important thing for me, a team that if you have to run into them is going to take their pound of flesh out of you. You may beat them, but they're going to beat you down. And then to move to the other side, I still think there's good potential for the Vegas Golden Knights to find that. Another team that's going to take its pound of flesh from you, the LA Kings, the same thing. So when it comes to teams that I think are the most susceptible, I do think, even though they're at the top of the West, the Vancouver Canucks would probably fit that mold. One last thing before we move on to some of our things here, Ken. I want to move on to the flip the switch comment that Rick Bowness, we had to bring this in because we do have a very, very strong flip the switch contingent in the Kenny and Renny chat room, saying, don't worry about it. Nothing matters until the playoffs, all this kind of stuff. Give Rick Bowness's assessment of the philosophy of flipping the switch come playoff time.
Yeah, he doesn't buy it. He was asked about it this morning, and he was very quick to dismiss it and point out all of the flaws with the argument. I don't have the direct quote in front. Let's see here. He was kind of blown away by the question, I think, to begin with, and then he gave a great answer. What's wrong with it? There's a lot wrong with it.
Yeah.
You want to have good habits going into the playoffs.
You
want to be playing really well. And we're not just talking about the outcome of the game. We're talking about the compete and the process and everything else. So there's no way we're just going to walk through these next 11 games. We still have a lot to fight for. I don't see an X by our name in a playoff spot, and we're still pushing. So there's no way we're I'm not taking, and then he ... I'm not taking the foot off the gas. Nope, not happening.
Yeah. And this goes to what we talked about in the last show, the idea of the Jets having that losing streak going into the Canadian division year. And yes, they pull off that win over the Edmonton Oilers, and it's 4 straight games. You mentioned it in that last or one of these podcasts where you said, statistically, it's not a sweep series, but they find a way to do it. But then it just gets turned on them right in the next series against the Montreal Canadiens, where they get swept in turn. This, to me, is where the lack of the good habits shows up, right? You pull something off against one team and you get by, and then the next team brings you a new set of challenges, and you're not ready or can't handle that new set of challenges because you don't have those habits locked down. So another time I thought Rick Bowness comes up with a great answer. Listen, can it be done? Can the switch flip be done? It can. I contend the Winnipeg Jets have never shown they're the kind of team that does it, and it is definitely an in case of emergency break glass scenario for teams to go in. Funny, we bring it up though, Ken, is Paul Maurice was the guy who always said you just got to get in there, right? And sure enough, he takes that team of his last year,
receipts.
just basically gets in there and goes to the cup final. So the biggest purveyor out there of, hey, we could flip the switch, you never know what's going to happen in the entire NHL, probably almost did it with his team last year. I don't know what that kind of mindset did to help. The good one by Tishu says Sean flipped the switch and the lights went out. Well done. Anyway,
one quick one. If the Jets went into a wild card, it would be the toughest travel for them. It would be the best matchup, I think. Still a tough matchup, but their best matchup in terms of how they match up. But it would also mean they're going into the Pacific time zone. That would mean in order for them to get through the conference final, it's 2 rounds and half the
Well, you
games in the
don't know
Pacific
that.
time zone with
You
crazy
don't know
travel.
that if they fall into that, they could play. If they fall into the wild card, they could play Colorado.
Possibly, yeah. But
Yeah,
Colorado's also right there with
this is what I'm saying.
Vancouver for first.
For sure, that's what I'm saying. So if you fall into that second
But
or
you just asked
first
me if they
wild
were
card,
playing Vancouver. I said if they were playing Vancouver, it would give them the
yeah,
toughest.
okay, you're saying
That would make
specifically.
them it
Yeah,
being in the
yep,
Pacific
I got
Division.
it. I got it. Anyways, done the flip the switch comment, which we needed to get to. Johnson Group got you covered. Play of the game. I'm just going to hijack this one, Ken.
You
Neil
got it.
Pionk had 2 really, really big blocks on this night, and on a night where Connor Hellebuck was stopping, a large amount of rubber. He had still some buy-in and some commitment from some of his defensemen to pull that off. So for me, that's Neil Pionk with the Johnson Group got you covered plays of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And Ken, I'm going to get you to start off with the lamplighter. What do you got there, my friend?
Oh, and again, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Well,
Sean,
you probably are, but let's see here where you're going with it.
Sean Monahan's goal is impressive. Same thing with Mason Appleton. And there have been some kind of wake up worthy comments about Mason Appleton never scoring important goals. He's got 14 goals this year as a third line player who doesn't play on the power play. I don't care when they come, but today he scored the first goal of the game for a team that has been struggling to score the first goal. So that one is a nice one as well. But because of the theme that we have been discussing in self-inflicted wounds, I'm going with the Connor Brown goal as the lamplighter because A, Connor Brown has been struggling to score, but B, it's emblematic of the Jets' issues lately in terms of their lack of consistency. Bad line change. Nobody picks up the trailer, and Connor Brown roofs his shot. So to me, although there were pretty goals all around and some hardworking goals, I think that because of where the Jets are as a team, my lamplighter is the Connor Brown goal. I know it's a little bit kind of off brand here, but I just think that was kind of, and that put them, I think that was the 3-1 goal. So it kind of put the Jets in a hole where, yes, they bounced back, but they didn't need to be put in the hole to begin with. It came from a self-inflicted wound. So that's why I'm choosing that as a lamplighter today.
I'm going to stick on brand and say the goals that I value most are the ones that are repeatable, the ones that work any time of year. I liked the goals that the Jets scored to get back into this game. They're the kind of goals they need more of. Brendan Dillon's is nice, but it's a bit of a self-inflicted wound in David Desharnais, who's extremely upset with himself as he screens. Vincent Desharnais as he screens his goaltender. It's the Sean Monahan goal for me, just because this is a shot for a tip in that situation there. It's Sean Monahan, who I thought had a great game, finding his spot in there, redirecting. Great job. And for me, that's why it's the TCB lamplighter of the game. But it doesn't matter what I think or what Ken thinks. It matters what you think. Share with us your favorite goal of the game, your lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you cannot wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company, where you can buy that in their store or get it nice and fresh on tap. My favorite way to get it. And you can share that with a pizza or some of their other food in a great atmosphere. That is TCB, as you will find out if you have tickets to the sold out final KNR podcast, live podcast of the year, being held at TransCanada Brewing Company. That will be April 26th. Looking forward to that. And I'm not going to blow this one, Ken, after blowing it last game. Scott Westman, good to see you here. Good timing for you, because you are the winner of the lamplighter from the last podcast. So you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name and send me your email, and I will send you a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company, the absolute nectar of the gods. And Ken, that brings us to the keg save of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, honorable mention to the Zach Hyman save in the first period, because it was absolutely absurd and how he, that was Gumby-like, and We always talk about big and boring, but that was peak athletic Connor Hellebuck sticking the pad out. But to me, I thought the double breakaway save on Evander Kane was an absolute series of beauties by Connor Hellebuck. Great pads or great save initially, and then he sticks the glove out on the rebound effort. So vintage Evander in the morning during his availability when asked about the maintenance day he was given, basically sounding like it was a healthy-ish scratch. Evander kind of dismissive towards our friend Gene Principe, and for folks who have had the privilege of covering Evander and sort of having to read between the lines, it sounded like a guy who was upset and salty about being on the third line, and then basically the team had given him an out by protecting him, and he basically was like, by the way, I was not needing a break. My body feels fine.
Yeah.
And I was a healthy scratch.
They gave him a hall pass and he crumpled it up and threw it back in their face on live television.
Not only did he was given a pass and then broke curfew anyway. He was given an extension on curfew and then broke it anyways.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And maintained eye contact while he did it the entire time. Loved it. There we go. So there you go. My keg save of the game in this situation for me is clearly that breakaway save, the double breakaway save by Connor Hellebuck. I said it. He was the best player in this game. He's the reason the Winnipeg Jets have walked away with a point in this game, which I think means a lot because, like I'd said, 3 points up on Nashville Predators. That's big. That is really big. Although I honestly believe there's no free bingo spots. I don't think it matters where the Jets end up. The only person I think it matters to is Mark Chipman because he wants as many home games as he can possibly get to get as big of a gate as he can possibly get. Anyways, that's my keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what mine is, though. It matters what yours is. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate to any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer.
Try again.
Than the last. I've had a lot of hits and misses or swings and misses on the show. The hits and misses being one of them.
Notice I'm not pointing them. Notice
one
I'm
on
not
top of the
pointing
other.
them out though.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Ken. Anyways, hashtag keg save of the game winner from our last show. That would be Lyndon Cwik, Cwik. It's a name I don't recognize. Lyndon, if you're a newbie and you're back, boy, oh boy, you had good timing. You won the keg, hashtag the keg save of the game, which means you have won a $50 gift certificate to the keg, but only if you direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, send me your email, and I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate to the keg, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And that is it. Shutting it down before I screw anything else up here, Ken, although I could probably pull something off. What do you got to say?
Just thanks to everyone who was kind enough to reach out with the birthday wishes here. It was great to spend a couple of days, first in Arizona and then in Vegas. Feeling a lot of gratitude as always. We always thank our folks who have followed this podcast and helped it grow immensely over these last 4 years. And just, again, feeling lots of gratitude for you as my partner and also to the great crew who follows the show religiously. It's awesome, and we're pumped about these last 10 games, and then the fun really starts.
Hey, find there's always life lessons to happen in these shows. Here's one of them. Oh, sorry, that's not the one. What am I doing? Wrong one here. Find someone who's as devoted to you as Bick Ronas is to trolling this chat room. As he says, 2 home playoff games and neither ones will be sellouts. Keep this receipt. We'll keep it, Bick, because we know you will back off if we prove later on that you were wrong about this, because we see you do it all the time there, owning your stuff. Anyways, thanks, chat room, everybody, for joining in. Thank you especially to all of you that I made join the show twice. I really appreciate that. Sorry for doing that. And sorry for all you out there, because I know there's a lot of people who listen after the fact. If you've gone and figured your way through the 2 podcasts back to back, thank you for doing that, and the patience that you show time and time again with the endless technical issues that we have on this show. Thank you, Ken, for doing a great job. Hope it was a really, really great birthday for you. And then finally, before we do go, I wanted to say, if you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Pristine Roofing, the Johnston Group, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course, the Keg. Thank you so much to all of them. Thank you to all of you. We'll do this and reconvene right back here, where I promise you it'll be just one show. It won't be 2, after the Jets play a huge game, looking for their first game of the year against the Vegas Golden Knights, looking to end a streak of 6 straight losses against the Golden Knights. Let's see if they can do it. We'll talk about it afterwards. See you later, everybody.